calling out my sister-in-law for using her children to emotionally manipulate me into going to dinner now instead of waiting 45 minutes. 2 weeks ago, we hosted a small family gathering at our home. It was meant to be a calm, light-hearted day, nothing fancy, just simple family time. My spouse, who is 29, had been wanting to reconnect with their family for a while, and I, being 32 and someone who actually enjoyed these little get-togethers when things stayed peaceful, was glad to help. The plan was casual. Everyone would arrive mid-afternoon. There would be light snacks, just enough to keep stomachs from growling, and then we would go out for dinner later that evening. We had even offered to cover the bill at the restaurant, a gesture we thought would be appreciated. My spouse's family came over around 3. That included their parents, their sister, and her 2 young kids. The kids were full of energy, as they always are. The moment they came through the door, they rushed toward the backyard, where I had set up a large tub of sidewalk chalk. I joined them outside to keep them entertained. My spouse stayed indoors, catching up with their sister and parents. It was sunny and warm, and the backyard concrete was just rough enough to hold vibrant chalk art. The kids squealed with excitement when I showed them how to blend colors using a wet sponge. We drew suns with smiling faces, giant hearts, and names inside stars. I helped them trace outlines of their hands and feet, and they giggled every time I exaggerated a finger or added tiny glasses to the stick figures. It was wholesome, quiet joy. No one seemed uncomfortable or hungry. At least, not yet. Inside, we had laid out snacks on the kitchen island: grapes, crackers, a few peanut butter sandwiches cut into triangles, and some apple slices. There was also a pitcher of lemonade. We did not serve a full meal, but we had not expected to. This was how we usually handled family visits like this. Something light, followed by a shared dinner later at a favorite restaurant at around 5:15. Just as I was rinsing off a bit of blue chalk dust from my fingers, my sister-in-law came out to the patio. She looked down at her phone, then at the kids, and said, "Hey, I think we should head out for dinner now." I looked up, surprised. "It's only 5:15, I said, gently. "I was hoping we could wait until 6. I have a coupon that kicks in after 6 o'clock. The prices drop a lot." She raised an eyebrow. "I'd really rather go now. The kids are getting restless." "I get that," I said, standing up and wiping my hands on my pants. "But it would save quite a bit. Almost $100. She folded her arms. "You offered to pay, remember?" "I did," I replied calmly, "and I still will. But if we can wait just 45 minutes, we can cut the cost in half. We're talking about going from a $175 meal to $75. That's not small." She sighed, clearly displeased, but did not argue further. Instead, she walked back toward the kids, muttering something under her breath. I tried to shake it off. I did not think it was unreasonable to wait. 45 minutes is not an eternity, especially when everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves just a moment ago. I returned to the yard, but the kids were now quieter, whispering to each other. A few minutes later, they marched onto the patio holding their bellies. "Auntie," one of them whined, "I'm so hungry." The other followed suit. "We haven't eaten anything all day." That was not true. I had watched them nibble on grapes and sandwiches, sipping juice between sidewalk drawings. But now, they were groaning and dragging their feet like they were starving. My eyes narrowed, not at the kids but at the situation. It did not take a genius to figure out what had just happened. My sister-in-law had clearly told them to act hungry. It was too sudden, too theatrical, the stomach clutching, the dramatic voices. It was all a performance. I felt a slow burn rise in my chest. I do not like being manipulated, and using children to do it. That crosses a line for me. My spouse's parents, who had been sitting inside, heard the children's complaints. My father-in-law frowned. "Well, if the kids are hungry, maybe we should just go now." My mother-in-law nodded. "Yes, let's not wait. It will be fine." I looked at my spouse, hoping for backup. They shrugged and said, "We could wait a little. It is not that late." But before that thought even settled, my sister-in-law was already putting the kids' shoes on and gathering their bags. She moved with speed and purpose, as if everything had already been decided. The moment the kids darted back inside, I turned to her. My voice was low, steady, and laced with quiet anger. "Using your children to emotionally manipulate people into getting your way is pathetic," I said. She looked up, eyes blazing. "Everyone is hungry. Just get over it. If you could not afford dinner, you should not have offered to pay." Her words hit hard. Not because they were true but because they were cruel. I had not said anything about not being able to afford it. I was trying to be responsible. Trying to make a kind offer more manageable. But now, I was being painted as stingy. And in front of the whole family. I did not respond right away. There was a heavy silence between us. She zipped up her daughter's sweater, then turned her back to me. The kids continued playing, now with less enthusiasm. The moment felt strange and uncomfortable. My stomach, which had not felt hungry before, now twisted with tension. I wondered, as I stood there, whether I had done something wrong. Was it wrong to try to save money on a big dinner bill? Was 45 minutes such a terrible thing to ask for? In my mind, it felt reasonable. But clearly, not everyone agreed. Maybe I had misread the room. Maybe I should have just let them all go and eaten alone later. But the feeling of being ganged up on, of watching children turned into tools for guilt, made me stand my ground, as the rest of the family started getting ready to leave. I stayed behind to help the kids gather their chalk pieces, not saying a word. The car ride to the restaurant was quiet. Even the kids, who just minutes earlier were moaning with hunger and pretending to faint from starvation, had stopped talking. They stared out of the windows, probably distracted by the movement of passing trees and streetlights starting to flicker on. I was in the front seat next to my spouse, while my sister-in-law sat in the back with her 2 children. Her arms were crossed, and she did not say a word. Her lips were tight, her jaw tense. She was clearly still upset. I stared out of the window and tried to calm the racing thoughts in my mind. I knew my words had hit a nerve maybe too hard, but in the moment, I had felt so cornered. So disrespected. This was not the first time something like this had happened. My sister-in-law had a way of getting what she wanted without saying much directly. She would sigh loudly, bring up unrelated complaints, or nudge the kids into doing or saying things that helped her case. It was not always so obvious, but it was there. Little things, quiet moves that made her seem like the reasonable one, while others looked stubborn or difficult. My spouse drove silently. I could feel the tension in their grip on the wheel. They were caught between me and their sister, unsure of how to fix it. I knew they did not like conflict. They often stayed quiet during family disagreements, hoping things would pass on their own. I wished I could do the same, but I could not pretend like nothing had happened. When we reached the restaurant, the hostess greeted us warmly. We were early about 30 minutes before the dinner deals began, but no one mentioned that. Everyone followed along, acting as though this had always been the plan. We were seated at a large table near the window. The menu was thick and colorful, filled with pictures of smiling meals and happy drinks. But my heart was not in it. My sister placed her order quickly and without eye contact. She asked for mac and cheese for both kids, and a grilled chicken salad for herself. My spouse's parents ordered next. They smiled and laughed with the waiter, as though the car ride and awkward silence had never happened. When it was my turn, I forced a smile and asked the waiter quietly, "Are the specials available yet?" The waiter glanced at his watch. Almost, but not quite. Another 25 minutes. I nodded slowly. "All right. I'll just have a lemonade for now." He took my menu and left. I noticed my sister-in-law roll her eyes. I ignored it. The kids, now lively again, giggled and played a hand-clapping game under the table. Their energy had returned, and their stomachs no longer seemed to be in any sort of crisis. I watched them with a mix of frustration and guilt. They were just children. They had been told to act a certain way, and they did. I could not blame them for something they did not fully understand. But I did blame their mother. The conversation at the table was light and easy at first. My spouse's dad talked about a new bird feeder he had put up in the backyard. My mother-in-law shared a story about her neighbor's cat sneaking into her garage and taking naps on the car. Everyone laughed politely. I sat and sipped my lemonade. Eventually, my spouse placed a hand gently on my knee under the table. I looked over at them. "You okay?" they whispered. I nodded, but I knew my eyes said otherwise. It just felt unfair, I said softly. "I know," they replied. "She should not have done that, but she's just like that sometimes. Why does no one ever say anything?" I asked. My spouse looked away. "I don't know," they admitted. "It's just easier not to start a fight." I leaned back in my chair. That was the thing, was it not? Easier. It was always easier to let her have her way. To change the plan. To make things go the way she preferred. And maybe everyone else had gotten used to it, but I had not. Dinner arrived quickly. My plate was the last to be brought out. I had ordered a simpler meal, something small to reflect the mood I was in. As we ate, the children chatted happily. One of them held up a chicken nugget and made it dance on the table like a puppet. My sister-in-law shushed him, but even her voice lacked warmth then. Unexpectedly, she turned toward me and said, "I was not trying to manipulate anyone." The table fell quiet. Even the kids stopped moving. I looked up. "You sure about that?" I asked, gently but firmly. She shrugged. "I just thought the kids were hungry. That's all." "They were not," I said. "They were fine until you talked to them." My spouse's mother jumped in, trying to ease the moment. "Let's just enjoy dinner. No need to go back and forth." But the words were already out. The tension was already back. My sister-in-law lowered her fork. "You said I was pathetic." In front of my kids, I took a deep breath. Because it was not right. They should not be used like that. I would never do that to them. She looked at me for a long time, her face unreadable. Then she said, "Well, next time maybe you should not host if you are going to make everyone wait around." "Hungry? That is not how kids work." I blinked. "You mean sandwiches and snacks?" I asked. She scoffed. "Sandwiches are not real food." My spouse touched my hand again, urging me not to reply. But I had to say something. They are real food, and, more importantly, no one said they were starving until you made them say it. The table fell into another stretch of silence. My heart thumped hard in my chest. I was not trying to win an argument, I just wanted to be honest. I wanted to call out something that had felt wrong. My spouse's dad cleared his throat. "Anyway, who's excited for dessert?" Everyone jumped at the chance to move on. The kids cheered, the waiter was waved down, and a tray of ice cream sundaes soon took over the table. But the mood had changed. Even with the laughter and sweet bites of whipped cream and cherries, something had shifted. A line had been drawn. And whether anyone else liked it or not, I had spoken up. Not to be rude, not to shame anyone, but to say that being kind and paying for dinner should not mean being pushed around, and certainly not manipulated with pretend hungry bellies. After dinner ended, everyone slowly got up from the table. The kids licked the last of the ice cream off their spoons. My sister-in-law helped her daughter with her sweater, not saying anything else to me. The night air outside was cooler now, with a soft breeze brushing past our faces as we walked to the parking lot. The car ride home was as quiet as before, but this time it felt different. Less tense, more tired. At home, my spouse and I did not talk about the dinner right away. We both went about tidying up. I folded the blanket left on the couch. They placed the extra snacks back into containers. We did not even turn on the lights in the living room, letting the soft golden glow from the kitchen spill into the space instead. Finally, when we were done, we sat down on the couch. There was a long pause. Then my spouse sighed and leaned there, head on my shoulder. "I know today was hard," they said softly. "It was," I replied, rubbing my fingers together. "But I think it needed to happen." They nodded slowly. "I wish my family could be more thoughtful." "Me too," I said. I did not expect a dramatic apology or change overnight. That was not how family worked. But I hoped my words had planted a seed. Not to divide us, but to show that boundaries mattered, that it was okay to speak up when something felt unfair. 2 days later, my sister-in-law sent a message in the family group chat. It was short and a little cold, but still something. "Thanks again for dinner. Sorry if the kids made it stressful. They just get hungry fast, and I guess I panicked a little. I'll bring snacks next time." I stared at the screen for a moment. It was not quite an apology, not a full admission, but it was something. I replied simply, "Appreciate that. We'll always be happy to host again. I just want things to be honest. That's all." There was no response after that, but I felt peace. Later that week, my spouse and I went grocery shopping. As we walked past the deli counter and the bakery, we chatted about small things, what kind of bread to get, whether we needed more fruit. I noticed my spouse pause in front of a shelf filled with sandwich spreads. They picked up a small tub of egg salad and smiled, just in case someone decides sandwiches are real food next time. I laughed. That night, we sat on the porch with homemade sandwiches and lemonade. The air was still warm, but the sky had begun to darken with tiny stars. We did not talk about that dinner again in detail, but we both knew we had grown from it. Here is what I learned. Sometimes, family is messy. Sometimes, people push your limits without realizing or without caring. But standing up for yourself, especially in moments when you feel small or brushed aside, is not rude. It is necessary. Speaking up does not mean shouting or fighting. It just means being honest, calm, clear. It means drawing a line with love, not anger. I will keep being kind. I will keep opening my home. But I will not stay silent when something is wrong. And I hope that, slowly, the people around me will learn that honesty and boundaries are part of real love. It may not always look perfect, but that is what real families do. They learn, they stumble, they try again. And yes, sometimes, they even learn that sandwiches are real food after all.